When we first meet business owners, it's kind of like anything else. We try to make ourselves look better than we typically are doing. And so we tell some stories that may or may not be true. And in that process of getting to know business owners, we realize that there's a lot underneath the surface that we want to be able to explore, to see, ultimately for one purpose, and that is to liberate them from chaos, to make time for what matters most. So we're not impressed by storytelling much anymore because we've heard so many stories that by the time we peel behind the curtain, we realize, oh, you're just like everybody else. And now we can get to work. Once we realize that, we can really, really get to work and take the sheen off. I want to explore something that we hear a lot from business owners when they first tell us, like everything's rosy, everything's good. And then we realize, I'm not the best communicator. I really kind of stink at it. And not only that, but my time starts to go away because I feel like I'm having to re-communicate over and over again. Hey, it's Scott Beebe with Business on Purpose, and I mentioned this in the last few episodes, but if you haven't checked out the Dickie and Donnie show, make sure to do that. It's both on this podcast thread for Business on Purpose, but it's also on our My Business on Purpose YouTube channel. You can actually watch them. They're super fun. And two of the coaches at Business on Purpose that I have the privilege of being able to work with, they have a really, really great show. So Dickie and Donnie, that is not their real name, but you'll get it the more you listen to it. Hey, let's explore the concept of retention and the Big Five feedback loop model is what we call. We want to guard our time like we guard our money. How do we do that? Well, let's root this conversation in communication. It's often a challenge in business owners' lives, and many owners find themselves in a constant state of reaction. They're waking up to chaos. They're spending their days just kind of little firefighters putting out fires, throwing Hail Marys, and juggling multiple tasks simultaneously. And so there's a mindset shift that's necessary to be able to address that challenge that a business owner feels with. And one of the key strategies is implementing what we call an ideal weekly schedule. See, we want to be great communicators. We want to be great budgeters. We want to be great job costers, inventory takers, whatever. We want to do really, really well in the day-to-day task of the business. But too many times we look up at 6 p.m. at night and we're like, I got nothing done today. So the ideal weekly schedule involves working on your week in time blocks. Kind of like, if you remember, if you're my age or a little bit older, I'm 49, about to be 50 at the time of this recording. Remember that game Tetris? Most everybody's heard of it. And you got the little blocks and you try to fit them in. That's an ideal weekly schedule. And so it involves working your week into blocks, time blocks, and recognizing that your time, not your money, you can make more, but you can't make more time. Your time is your most valuable asset. In fact, Dietrich Bonhoeffer calls it irrevocable. So why not manage it as carefully as you manage your money? It's a great asset that you've been given, and it's finite. It's terminal. It's going to go away at some point. So think of your week as a budget of time slots that you can allocate to specific tasks. You need time for estimating, sales, outreach, marketing, whatever, then schedule it. You're expecting client calls, then set aside time for those as well. The key is to predetermine these time buckets rather than letting others dictate your schedule. Because if you don't determine these time buckets, then others, me, anybody else, will dictate your schedule. You'll respond to what we have diagnosed as this disease. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. You might think that you need to be available whenever a client calls, and you need to jump into response. But that's a red flag. Anytime you do that, I want you to think about that. That's what firefighters and police officers are for, not you. The moment someone else is in charge of your time, you have lost control. I've heard it before that email is essentially someone else's agenda for your day. Do you know you spend on average about 3 hours on email every day? That's a typical business owner and typical worker. The same applies to constantly responding to text and phone calls. When you're doing that, you feel compelled to be available at all times because you are, quote, needed. Well, when you start to feel that way, it's worth examining whether that is truly the case, or, it's a hard statement, if it's really just your ego that needs the evaluation or the validation. Here's what's happening. You're likely suffering from what I told you about just a minute ago, this disease that we've sort of crafted to diagnose. We call it LLVD. Kind of sounds disgusting, actually. We call it the Loudest Voice Disease. Now, I'll go more into that, in depth on that on a future podcast, but just bookmark that, Loudest Voice Disease. Some of you even hear it and you're like, I definitely suffer from that. It's time to step back and reassess. Remember this, your time is your time, and your calendar should reflect that. Now, even as I make that statement, your time is your time, some of you right now are going, no, it's not. No, it is not. Yes, it is. And we can play this tug of war back and forth, but the reality is your time is your time. You can go do something else. Now, there could be ramifications for that, but it's still your time. And until you understand that, you're not in a place to be able to bookmark and calendar your day. And also in a future podcast, I'll go over the Annie Dillard quote that talks about a schedule. She says, how we spend our day is, of course, how we spend our lives. Now, you might argue that you need to be available for other people, for maybe some of your vendors, your customers, or any other pressing matters. However, you can still address those needs within a structured schedule. The goal is to take control of your time and use it intentionally rather than letting external demands dictate your day. By starting to implement this approach of blocked schedule, you can create a more organized and efficient and less stressful work environment. It allows you to be able to focus on more important tasks without constant interruptions, ultimately leading to better productivity and work-life balance. Read a book recently by a guy named Dan Martelli called Buy Back Your Time. Great book. And in it, he talked about the value of bringing on an assistant, especially for the business owner. We've been around for 10 years at this point, and I realized this is something that I probably need to do. And we've had different people in the business help and support me around some of those elements so that I could be freed up to do three primary things that for me are important. Number one is coaching my small book of clients. Number two is actually developing new tools, resources that we've got under development right now. Super powerful operating system tool we're building right now. And then third is to spend my time storytelling, doing these podcasts, going out and speaking to groups, speaking at events. And so those three things, anything that is in contrast to those three things ultimately is going to take away from my time, and I cannot get that time back. So we decided to bring on what we call an implementation assistant. And for the first 3 months, that role is dedicated to me, to my role, so that I can get some of these things off. Well, within their ideal weekly schedule, we have 3 distinct email time blocks throughout the day: morning, midday, afternoon. Notice I am not checking my email. In fact, this person has been on board for about 2 weeks. I have probably only been in my email inbox 2 to 3 times in those 4 weeks. And I haven't looked today. It's a Monday at the time that I'm recording this. But my guess is there's a few emails that are in there that have come in over the weekend, but they will likely be cleaned out by noon today. Why? It's because I'm valuing my time, and we are investing in somebody else, and what we're doing is we're buying time at that point. And so your time you cannot get back. And so that's how we're doing it in our world. If you got any questions about any of this stuff, go on to businessonpurpose.com/ask. Wait, an implementation assistant? Ideal weekly schedule? Yeah, hop on with one of our coaches. About 15, 20 minutes. If you're a business owner, 3 or more employees doing $1 million or more in revenue, we'd love to be able to hop on with you, answer any questions you've got. And then if you want to know how you can work with us, we're not going to press you on it. There's no strings attached. But if you want to know, we'll tell you too. We'll give you all the details of how you can be liberated from chaos to make time for the things that matter most.